I want you to imagine a really bizarre, like almost impossible connection for a second.
Okay, I'm intrigued.
So think about modern climate change data.
Right.
Then think about the exact placement of the James Webb Space Telescope out in the, freezing dark of space.
Mm-hmm.
Now add in the sudden, just explosive rise of artificial intelligence. If I asked you what those three things have in common, you'd probably say absolutely nothing.
Yeah, I mean, they just seem like random, chaotic hallmarks of the modern age.
Exactly. But what if they weren't random at all? What if they were perfectly and mathematically mapped out in ancient texts written thousands of years ago?
It sounds totally like the premise of some sprawling science fiction novel, but, I mean, that is exactly the claim we are looking at today.
Which is why we're doing this deep dive.
Right, we are unpacking the ancient concept of the Prakriti Yug-chakra, which roughly translates to nature's era cycle.
Okay, nature's era cycle.
Yeah, and this source material claims to possess the overarching mathematical formula that dictates the exact rise and fall of human civilizations.
And the mission for this deep dive is to basically look under the hood of that wild claim.
Exactly. We're impartially analyzing this.
Right. We are going to explore how this text maps ancient mythology directly onto our modern historical and even scientific timelines. Because look, if you are listening to this right now, you'd probably look around at the news and feel like modern history is just flying off the rail.
Oh, absolutely. It feels completely unpredictable.
Totally. But this source argues the exact opposite. It argues that we are not living in chaos. We are actually just following a strict, inescapable cosmic script.
And that script is supposedly written in the literal physical cycles of time.
So where do we even begin with that?
Well, according to the ancient Puranas, which are these vast collections of Indian literature, philosophy, and myth, there isn't just one type of time cycle.
Okay.
There are actually three main types, and they operate on vastly different scales. First, you have the Divya Yuga-chakra.
Divya Yuga-chakra.
Right. This is a 12,000-year cycle based entirely on our solar system's rotation through the galaxy.
Okay, got it.
And the source claims this cycle affects what it calls the divine element in the universe.
Okay, let's unpack this for a second, because what exactly does the text mean by the divine element? That sounds, I don't know, a bit esoteric.
It is, yeah. But there's a physical logic to it, at least in the text.
Like what?
The text suggests that as our solar system moves through different cosmic dust clouds or magnetic zones in the galaxy, the subtle background radiation shifts.
Oh, so it's a physical radiation thing.
Right. And this shift subtly elevates or depresses universal consciousness over a 12,000-year period. It's the divine baseline, basically.
Okay.
Then you zoom out much, much further to the second cycle. This is a massive 4.32 million year cycle.
That's over 4 million years.
Yeah. And in this model, the sun remains stationary and the Earth itself moves closer to or further from it over millions of years. This alters the masculine element of the cosmos.
Wait, I have to ask for some clarity on masculine element too. Are we talking about like gender on a cosmic scale?
Not exactly. In the ancient framework, masculine refers to the raw driving force of physical creation and destruction, the overarching cosmic dominance.
Oh, I see.
So the Earth, moving physically closer to the sun over millions of years, cranks up the literal temperature and energetic output of the planet.
Which has shaped everything.
Exactly. It shapes the raw biological evolution of life.
Wait, I need to stop you there, though, because you're saying millions of years of macro to celestial movement just shifts cosmic background energy and raw biological matter?
Right.
But the source material we're looking at spends almost all its time focusing on a third cycle, the Prakriti Yuga-chakra.
Yes, the Prakriti cycle.
Are you telling me that this third cycle is the one that actually dictates all of human civilization? Because, honestly, that feels incredibly human-centric. How does the text even justify that?
The justification really lies in the mechanics of it. The larger cycles, they just set the stage, but the Prakriti cycle is the actual play.
Like the second hand on a clock.
That is a perfect analogy, yeah. The hour hand and minute hand do their things, but the second hand is where you see the immediate movement.
Okay.
According to the text, this cycle begins when the Earth centers itself in a new gravitational position. Earth becomes the focal point.
Right.
Then, the sun, the moon, and this shadow entity called Rahu shift their proximity to Earth.
So it's all about what's closest to us.
Exactly.
Yeah.
It's not human-centric out of ego. It's human-centric because humanity is supposedly the species biologically wired to react most violently to these specific localized gravitational shifts.
Huh. Well, If the ancient texts were literally structured to mirror this human-centric cycle, the authors must have possessed some kind of precise mathematical formula to base their chapters on.
They did.
So what is the actual math governing this timeline?
The text outlines a very specific mathematical formula called the universal formula, and it divides the entire cycle into 12 parts.
12 parts.
And the ratio is 1 to 5 to 5 to 1.
1 to 5 to 5 to 1.
Okay.
Yeah, walk us through what those numbers represent in practice.
These represent the 4 yugas, or eras. The first era is Satyayug. That gets 1/12 of the time.
So a short era.
Right. It is a brief period of creation, like a cosmic reset where humanity is just finding its footing.
Okay, what's the next one?
Next is Treta Yug, getting 5/12 of the time. This is a massive, long period of expansion, empire building, and growth.
So the first 5 is expansion.
Yes. Then comes Dwapar Yug, which also gets 5/12.
Another long one.
An equally long period, but characterized by intense struggle, societal friction, and shifting values.
So 1 is creation, 5 is expansion, 5 is struggle.
Exactly. And finally, you have Kaliyug taking the final 1/12, a short, highly volatile period of destruction, decay, and just the dismantling of everything built in the previous eras.
Short creation, long expansion, long struggle, short destruction.
You got it?
But, and this is where the source drops an absolute bombshell.
Oh, yeah, it really does.
Because when we read about the ancient eras, like the times of the great Indian epics, the Ramayana and the Mahabharata, those specific cycles lasted for millions of years.
Right. Huge scales of time.
But the source claims that the current cycle we are living in right now, which it calls the extra Yuga-chakra, is incredibly short.
It is shockingly short.
Like our entire cycle, from start to finish, is only 6,000 years long.
Just 6,000.
Let's do the math for the listener here. That means our Satyayug, the era of creation, was just 500 years long. The Treta Yug and Dwapar Yug, the eras of expansion and struggle, were 2,500 years each.
Right.
And our current Kaliyug, the era of destruction we are supposedly entering, is a mere 500 years long.
That scaled-down math completely rewires how we have to look at our own history. I mean, the psychological impact of that compression is just staggering.
It really is. Think about a hyperlapse video of a flower blooming and dying in 3 seconds.
Right, right.
If past versions of humanity experienced a million-year cycle, societal change would happen at a glacial, totally manageable pace.
People could adapt.
Exactly. But our 6,000-year cycle means we are watching that flower bloom and die in fast forward. What used to take millions of years to process is now hitting human neurology in a matter of centuries.
It's way too fast.
We are burning through a cosmic cycle at warp speed, which completely explains why our modern reality feels so inherently unstable today.
Yes, that hyperlapsed speed is the exact reason the ancient texts say human psychology fractures so deeply during this era. But it's not just the speed that drives the behavioral changes.
Oh, really?
No. The source argues that these eras are actually governed by specific planetary bodies shifting closer to Earth.
Okay, hold on. How do planetary bodies actually alter human psychology on a mass scale? Like, are we talking about some kind of astrological magic here? Or is there a physical mechanism the text is actually pointing to?
Think of it less like magic and more like the gravitational pull of the moon creating massive ocean tides.
Okay, tides, I'm with you.
Only here, the text suggests these planetary shifts are creating tides in human neurochemistry and global climate.
Wow.
Let's look at the first long era, Kaliyug. During this time, the sun is the closest, most dominant gravitational influence on Earth. The text claims this creates Suryavanshi, or sun dynasties.
Okay, I get that the sun represents expansion and power, but how does a celestial body being closer translate to the specific sociology of an entire era?
Well, the mechanism is both environmental and psychological. A closer sun drastically warms the planet, right?
Right.
This forces disparate human tribes to congregate around drying river valleys just to survive. This intense environmental pressure requires massive, centralized armies and authoritarian rulers to manage the scarce resources.
That makes incredible sense. The environment forces the social structure.
Exactly. And psychologically, the sun has countless rays touching everything, inspiring a decentralized worship of nature. This is why polytheism, the worship of many gods, flourishes.
That is fascinating. So the environment forces the social structure, which then inspires the theology.
Yes. Then the cycle shifts into Dwapar Yug, the era of struggle. The sun moves away and the moon comes closer.
Okay.
This brings about Chandravanshi or Moon Dynasty civilizations. The environmental pressure completely shifts. The world cools down.
And the moon is totally different from the sun.
Right. The moon doesn't create its own light, it just reflects it. It is a solitary, singular beacon in the dark sky.
And I imagine that completely changes the global vibe.
Oh, totally. The focus of civilization turns inward. The solitary nature of the moon inspires the shift toward monotheism, the absolute worship of a single solitary god.
Oh, okay.
Societally, a cooler, more navigable planet allows for the explosion of merchant classes. The dominant drive shifts away from territorial conquest and moves toward the accumulation of wealth and commerce.
Okay, so we have the sun driving the ancient polytheistic empires and the moon driving the commerce-focused monotheistic era of struggle. But that leaves Kaliyug, the short fast-forward era of destruction. If the sun and the moon govern the past, what governs this phase?
Well, the text mentions a third body called Rahu.
Rahu. In ancient mythology, isn't Rahu a shadow demon that swallows the sun to cause eclipses? Are we really supposed to believe a literal mystical demon controls our neurochemistry?
If we connect this to the bigger picture, this is where the source makes its most fascinating leap. It bridges ancient myth with modern astrophysics.
How so?
The source explicitly equates the demon Rahu with the L2 Lagrange point.
The L2 Lagrange point. Okay, for those who aren't astrophysicists listening to this, what exactly is that?
So in astrophysics, a Lagrange point is a specific stable position in space where the gravitational pull of two large masses like the sun and the earth perfectly equals the force required for a small object to move with them.
Like a parking spot in space.
Exactly. And the L2 point sits about 1,000,000 miles directly behind the Earth, locked permanently in its shadow, looking out into the cold void of deep space.
Oh.
The text argues this literal point of permanent shadow is the scientific reality of Rahu. And in Kaliyug, as the moon moves to its maximum distance from Earth, the unique gravitational anomaly of this L2 point asserts dominance over human civilization.
But how does a shadow point in space affect human neurochemistry?
The source argues that the unique, combined gravitational pull at the L2 point subtly alters the electromagnetic field around Earth.
Oh.
Think about the iron in human blood or the electrical impulses in the brain. The text suggests that over generations, this specific electromagnetic frequency literally wires human dopamine pathways differently. It fundamentally alters how we perceive reality and interact with one another.
Now, it's really important to remember as we unpack this, our goal isn't to validate this as a modern political manifesto.
Right, not at all.
We are just here to analyze how this ancient text mathematically maps its astronomical theories onto today's socio-political landscape. Regardless of where you fall on the political spectrum, we are just looking at the source.
Completely impartially.
Exactly. So, impartially speaking, what does the text claim happens when the L2 point's electromagnetic frequency takes over?
The text calls the resulting state the Prit Veda, which translates to a completely inverted system. The traditional structures dictated by the sun and moon are turned completely upside down.
How so, mechanically?
Mechanically, because L2 represents the void, a space totally devoid of natural sunlight, human intuition plummets. To compensate, humanity creates artificial intuition.
Artificial intuition.
Yes. This ushers in the absolute dominance of machines, complex technology, and ultimately artificial intelligence.
And the text outlines a massive sociological flip alongside the technology, right?
Yes, it does. Where the previous eras were heavily male-dominated due to the masculine solar influence, Rahu's inverted influence dissolves those historical binaries.
Okay.
The text states this era naturally creates female-dominated societies and brings prominence to LGBTQ+ communities and non-traditional physical forms.
Wow, it specifically maps that out.
It does. Furthermore, because L2 is a point of isolated shadow, the traditional concept of the community and the family shatters. People isolate themselves, leading to a global epidemic of intense individualism and loneliness.
See, when the text outlines this sociological flip, it isn't framing it as a 21st century culture war.
No, not at all.
We're looking at this strictly through the text's mechanical lens. It argues that dissolving traditional structures is simply the mathematical result of L2's gravitational influence overriding the sun and moon's historical pull.
Exactly.
Now that sounds completely abstract until, and here's where it gets really interesting, it sounds abstract until you look at the hard historical and scientific data the source provides to back this up.
The historical alignment is striking.
It maps this 6,000-year cycle perfectly onto our recorded history.
Let's walk through the timeline.
Yeah.
Consider the transition from Satyuga to Tretayuga. That's the moment the 500-year creation period ended and the sun moved closer to Earth.
Right, the beginning of the Sun dynasties. When exactly did this happen, according to the timeline?
The source correlates this astronomical shift with what modern climate science calls the 4.2 kiloyear event.
Oh, I know this one. The 4.2 kiloyear event was a massive global megadrought roughly 4,200 years ago.
Yes.
The sudden climate shift fundamentally collapsed the major early human civilizations, like the Old Kingdom of Egypt, the Mesopotamian Empire, and the Indus Valley civilization.
Exactly. The extreme drying of the planet forced disparate peoples into massive, centralized, expanding empires just to survive.
Wow.
It perfectly matches the text's description of the environmental pressure required to birth Kaliyug, the era of expansion.
Huh?
Now look at the next transition, from Kaliyug to Dwapar-Yug.
When the sun moves away and the moon comes closer.
Right. The source aligns this shift with the year 536 AD.
Oh, wow. If you are a history buff, you know 536 AD. Historians quite literally refer to it as the worst year to live.
They really do. In 536 AD, massive volcanic eruptions occurred globally. A dense ash fog blanketed Europe, the Middle East, and parts of Asia, literally plunging the world into darkness for over a year.
The sun was literally blocked out.
Yes, temperatures plummeted, crops failed. According to the source, this catastrophic climate event was the physical friction of the cosmic gears turning.
The Earth adjusting.
The Earth was adjusting as the sun receded and the moon became the dominant luminary, ushering in the Dwapar-Yug era of cooler climates, inward focus, and wealth accumulation.
It is uncanny how these ancient transitions map onto undisputed climate cataclysms in our historical record.
It's hard to ignore.
But the biggest one is the transition we are supposedly in right now. From the moon-nominated Dwapar-Yug to the Rahu-dominated Kaliyug. When does the source say this specific transition began?
The source marks the exact dawn of the Dwapar to Kaliyug transition right around the year 1643 AD.
1643, the literal dawn of the Enlightenment and the scientific revolution.
Exactly. The source argues this is the moment the electromagnetic frequency at the L2 point, Rahu, began to hit Earth's atmosphere.
And the result was?
The result was a massive scientific boom, the invention of complex machines, global revolutions that overthrew ancient sun and moon ordained monarchies.
The foundation of modern democracy in places like America.
Yes. The text categorizes all of this, the reliance on science, machines, and democratic ideologies, as the specific inverted influence of Rahu taking root in human consciousness.
I want you to pause and reflect on that for a second. Think about how seamlessly this ancient mathematical timeline maps onto the actual turning points of human history.
It's mind-blowing.
From the collapse of Mesopotamia and the megadrought, to the global volcanic winter of 536 AD, to the scientific explosion of the 1600s. It forces you to consider the possibility that human progress and global climate change aren't just random events caused by human choices.
Right.
They might actually be deeply physically intertwined with planetary gravity.
And if that timeline matches up perfectly all the way to 1643 AD, this raises a really important question.
Yeah.
Where exactly does this 6,000-year clock put us right now today?
Well, this is where the text gets incredibly urgent, because it claims that we are currently standing at the very end of the Dwapar-Kaliyug transition.
We are right at the edge.
It gives a highly specific window. It says the final transition period is happening right now, between the years 2022 and 2033.
And the catalyst for this final shift is honestly the most mind-bending connection in the entire text. According to the source, the trigger that tipped the scales was the launch and deployment of the James Webb Space Telescope, the JWST.
The JWST, the most advanced piece of technology humanity has ever built. But why a telescope? Like, why does a machine trigger a cosmic era?
What's fascinating here is the esoteric logic behind it. Think about where the JWST is parked.
Okay.
It isn't orbiting Earth like the Hubble. It was sent specifically to the L2 Lagrange point.
Oh, wow.
And it arrived there in early 2022.
The exact start of the transition window.
Exactly. Humanity took its ultimate machine, its pinnacle of artificial intelligence and observation, and placed it directly into the L2 point. We placed the machine into the literal domain of Rahu.
Wow.
The source argues that L2 is the domain of the void. By seeding that void with an artificial human construct, we essentially plugged a technological router into a cosmic socket.
That is a terrifying image.
Right. We created an artificial eye in the deepest shadow, which basically short-circuited the natural cycle. The text claims this specific action is what sparked the final violent transition into Kaliyug.
And is that why things feel so extreme right now?
Yes. The source says this is the exact reason we are currently seeing an era of prolonged global wars and absolute peak extreme climate change. We have downloaded the inverted system at maximum bandwidth.
The fact that they tie an ancient concept of a shadow demon to the specific orbital location of our most advanced space telescope is it's staggering.
It really is.
But you said the transition window goes until 2033. How does the transition officially end and full Kaliyug begin?
Well, it comes back to the moon's gravity. It is a known scientific fact that the moon is currently moving a few centimeters away from the Earth every single year.
Right.
The source integrates this physical reality into its prediction. It states that on this specific day, the moon finally reaches its maximum allowable distance from Earth and locks into that distant orbit. The gravitational snap will cause a massive global earthquake.
A global earthquake.
Yes, and that earthquake will mark the absolute end of the transition. Full Kaliyug will officially begin.
And what does full Kaliyug mean for us structurally, like as a society?
It means the unstoppable dismantling of everything built in the previous eras.
Everything.
Everything. All current institutions, all nations, all faiths and religions, and the very concept of the traditional family will fully dissolve under the influence of Rahu's absolute machine-driven isolation.
So what does this all mean? When I first read that, it sounded absolutely terrifying, but honestly, looking at it through the lens of this text completely reframes my modern anxiety.
How so?
Well, we spend so much time worrying that humanity is destroying itself purely by its own hand, that our politics or our pollution or our greed is breaking the world. But this source argues something strangely comforting. It argues that we aren't breaking the world. We are just playing out the final 1/12 of a cosmic gear turning. We are doing exactly what the gravitational pressures of a 6,000-year clock demand we do.
Yeah, it completely strips away the human ego. It suggests we are really just passengers on a celestial ride, reacting to magnetic and cosmic shifts that we can neither see nor control.
Which brings us to the end of this deep dive. Let's summarize what we've unpacked today. The Prakriti Yug-chakra is pitched as far more than just ancient mythology.
Definitely.
Through the lens of this text, we've explored the 1:5 to 5:1 formula and how the gravitational tides of the sun, the moon, and the L2 Lagrange point map perfectly onto our historical climate events.
From the 4.2 kiloyear event to 536 AD.
Exactly, and our modern technological milestones right up to the James Webb Space Telescope.
But, I want to leave you with a chilling thought drawn directly from the source's final glimpse into the future.
Oh boy, okay.
If full Kaliyug is defined by the absolute dominance of machines and artificial intelligence, where does human evolution go next?
Well, if we are at the peak of technology, we assume the next step is becoming even more advanced, right? Maybe merging with the tech.
You'd think so, but the source teases a terrifying endpoint to this hypermodernity. It claims that the ultimate result of Rahu's AI-dominated era isn't evolution, it's devolution.
Devolution.
Yes, as machines take over every aspect of thought, intuition, and survival, human biology will atrophy. The text suggests that humans will physically and mentally regress.
Like biologically.
Literally shrink in stature, regressing back to a primal, Lucy-like hominid state. We will lose our language, our complex institutions, and find ourselves quite literally back in an era of caves, dominated by large, dinosaur-like beasts of nature reclaiming the Earth.
So the pinnacle of our intelligence is the exact mechanism that causes our biology to devolve. I want you to look at your smartphone right now. Just look at the screen. Based on the mechanical logic of this ancient text, you have to wonder, is that device in your hand the pinnacle of human evolution? Or is it the exact tool that is mathematically designed to drive our neurochemistry back to the Stone Age? Thank you for joining us on this deep dive. Keep questioning the world around you, keep looking for the patterns, and we'll see you next time.